Hey guys, welcome to episode 19 of Short Bits by Shorty. Just this one and GI, and we're done with MedChem forever. To start off, number one, I just wanted to say thanks again for the iPad. I really appreciate it, actually, for real. And I really appreciate you appreciating the videos. Hope you find them helpful, and hope you find these last ones helpful too. It's twice the size of my old one and 10 times the memory, so we're going 10 times as hard as we did before with videos and shoutouts, maybe. Number two, before we get started, here is Edda's dog, Callie. She has a stuffed friend that looks just like her that she carries around everywhere. If you can't see her, here's Callie. Here's her stuffed friend that she carries with her everywhere. So cute. And she has an Instagram at that black lab Callie, because she's a black lab and her name is Callie. So at her, follow her. Let's get started. Okay. The basics of steroids. So steroids have a 4-membered ring structure. The A ring, B ring, C ring, D ring. A, B, and C are 6-membered ring structures, and D ring is a 5-membered ring structure. Let's see. To number the rings, let's see. You're gonna start with the A ring and go all the way to D ring. Looks like a caterpillar or a snake, doesn't it? To letter the rings, in case you asked you to letter them, you have the A ring in the booty hole of the caterpillar, then you go all the way to the head. So booty hole A, B, C, D. To name the steroid, you're gonna start with the top of the booty on the A ring. Start at the top of the A ring. Go counterclockwise to 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is counterclockwise. 6 is counterclockwise. 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's counterclockwise. You probably don't have to remember how to number this, but just in case he does. Then the C ring is clockwise. So C is clockwise. Counterclockwise also starts with a C, but let's just ignore that. So the C ring, you're gonna go clockwise. So C is clockwise. D is counterclockwise. If you can't see that, it's counterclockwise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Counterclockwise in the B ring. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Clockwise on the C ring, because clockwise starts with a C. 11, 12, 13, 14. Then counterclockwise in the D ring, 15, 16, 17. Your main substituent groups, so you probably should know this, because I will reference these positions later in this video, and he does so in the lecture. If you want to know a few things, the 19 substituent and the 18 substituent. So the 19 substituent sits between A and B. 18 substituent sits between the C and the D ring. So it's not the way you think it should be, where 18 should be here because it's A, and you start lower in the alphabet and you go higher in the alphabet to 19. Nope, apparently it goes 19, 18. So 19 and 18 sits on the B and the A ring. 18 sits on the D, the C ring. Should also know positions: 1, the top of the booty hole; 2, 3, 4, and 5. So basically, those 7 positions, all the positions in the A ring from 1 to 5, 19 and 18. Those are the big players in estrogens. Let's see. The 3D conformation is shown here. So if I look at the steroids in the 2D form, it's this. If I want to look at it as a 3D model, where you have actual bends and curves in the model because of chemistry. The A, so remember the 19 position sits between the A and the B ring. 18 position sits between the C and the D ring. I'll label the rings for you. Here's A, B, C, D. So your 19, okay. And your sits between A and the B ring. 18 sits between the C and the D ring. Your 19 is wedged. Your 18 is also a wedge. remember your wedges and dashes. So wedge means it's coming out of the page. Dash means it's coming into the page. So here's your wedge, and here's your wedge. So they will sit on top, coming out of the page, and you call that beta. So beta is a wedge. Beta is a wedge. So beta coming top is a wedge. So 19 here's a wedge. 18 here's a wedge. Anything that's a dash is, or on the bottom, is alpha. That makes sense because if you rotate this 3D model to face you, you would see that, remember I said here, if you look here in the 2D model, 19 is a wedge, so it's going to come out of the page. If you rotate the molecule this way, 19 will come out of the page, so on top, 18 will also come out on top. Consequently, if you have something on top and it's a wedge, if you want to get the dash, which is the opposite of a wedge, you're going to have to put it on the bottom. So that's alpha. Alpha. So alpha is a dash. Beta is a wedge. Beta is also top of the molecule, as shown here. Alpha is also the bottom of the molecule, shown here, and this hydroxyl. So this hydroxyl is should be a dash. This should be a wedge, 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 because they're all on top. This is a dash, 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 because they're on the dash, and the dash, because they're on the bottom. This is equatorial. I'm not going to explain it. Ignore that. Dash, the hydroxyl is a dash, and this is a dash. So all of these are wedges. These are all dashes. So beta are all tops. The wedge, alpha is all on the bottom. Let's see. Pharmacologically, steroids act as ligands to hormone receptors. There's 3 types of hormone receptors relevant to this lecture. There's estrogen receptor alpha, estrogen receptor beta, and the progesterone receptor beta. Hormone receptors are composed of mainly the ligand binding site, the ligand binding domain, and the DNA binding domain. I put the DNA binding domain in parentheses because it's not the major player. Because steroids act as ligands, so they bind to the ligand binding domain. What does bind to the DNA binding domain? DNA. A+ for you if you answer that. Ligands bind to the ligand binding domain of hormone receptors. Another part of the hormone receptors are the DNA binding domain where their DNA binds. The main players are the ligand binding domains of the hormone receptors. So now on to your different steroids. Oh, see how fast this moves? This is a great iPad. Oh gosh, man, this is like a new baby. Alright, except babies can't move fast because they're... Okay, never mind. Estrogens. So I'm going a little out of the slides, out of the order of the slides for some of these, but I'm going in an order that makes sense to the I'm going from concepts to examples that illustrate the concepts. Okay, so metabolism of estrogens. So your main player is 17 beta estradiol. It's named so because, oh, well, I should have said this. Your 17 beta, your 17 position is here, right next to your 18. So remember, your 18 is between your senior D ring. So A, B, C, D, C, D. Your 18 is between your senior D. Your 17 is right here. It's beta because it's wedge. So 17 beta, it's wedge, coming out on top. Hydroxyl, your main estrogen group, you'll see later. Diol, so di means 2, all means alcohol. So 2 alcohols, 1 alcohol, 2 alcohol. So 17 beta estradiol. So 17 beta estradiol is metabolized to estrone. It has your estrogen and your ketone. O and E is your ketone group. Ketone is shown here. So 17 beta estradiol is converted to estrone by 17 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. In English, this means at the 17 beta position, the 17 beta position being the 17 wedge position, hydroxy at the 17 beta, which has a hydroxy on the steroid. This is your steroid. Dehydrogenase. So D means un, or like control Z, or undo. Hydrogenase. So you're removing the hydrogen. You're undoing the hydrogen. You're removing the hydrogen. So 17 beta, 17 wedge hydroxy, steroid, hydroxyl on the 17 beta position, dehydrogenase. You're removing the hydrogen on the 17 beta hydroxy on the hydroxyl at the 17 beta position of your steroid. So removing the hydrogen leaves you with a ketone. Both these molecules can be conjugated, meaning they can be glucuronidated or sulfonated. They can undergo glucuronidation or sulfonation. Umbrella term is conjugation. Remember from Zhang's medchem lecture in the opioids last year. Conjugation is the umbrella term for glucuronidation, sulfation. You can add a glucuronide or a sulfate group to it at the hydroxyl position. So meaning over here and over here, you can conjugate it. Or you can conjugate this. So any hydroxyls you can conjugate. You cannot conjugate this ketone because it's not a hydroxyl. Let's see. Estradiol, 17 beta estradiol is converted to 2-hydroxy-estradiol. So you're adding you're adding hydroxyl at the 2 position of the estradiol. So here's your estradiol. All you're doing is adding a hydroxyl at the 2 position. So I told you that you should know all positions in the A ring. Here's your A ring, 1, 2, 3. There's 1 at the 3 position. Here you're adding 1 at the 2 position. So 1, 2, 3, add a 2 right there, you get 2-hydroxyestradiol. This can also be conjugated because it has hydroxyl groups. You can also form 4-hydroxyestradiol. So you go from 17 beta estradiol to 4-hydroxyestradiol. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's your 4-hydroxy. This can also be conjugated because it has hydroxyl groups. In terms of estrone, which is metabolite of 17 beta estradiol by 17 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, you can form 4-hydroxyestrone. So it's the estrone with a 4-hydroxy, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here you have a 2-hydroxyestrone. You can also form 2-hydroxyestrone, 1, 2. So for each molecule, 17 beta estradiol and estrone, you can form the 2-hydroxy and the 4-hydroxy. All these compounds can be conjugated, which is the umbrella term for glucuronidation and sulfation at the hydroxyl position. You can only conjugate, in here, this lecture can only conjugate hydroxyl groups, not ketones. SAR. Let's see. Okay, so your it's also in terms of hydroxyl groups. These have to be 10 to 12 angstroms apart. Angstroms are a unit of measurement on the atomic level, just like your centimeters are to the human level or the ant level. Let's see. So the distance between this hydroxyl and this hydroxyl is 10 to 12 angstroms, and that's good because the ligand binding sites on here's your estrogen receptor, here's your ligand binding site 1, ligand binding site 2. Your hydroxyls have to reach from here to here, and that distance is 10 to 12 angstroms to bind to the estrogen receptor and cause downstream effects. This is a planar hydrophobic scaffold. It's planar because it's flat. Hydrophobic because if you notice all the methyl groups, all the carbons, carbons are methyls. Carbons are methyls. Methyls are hydrophobic. So planar hydrophobic scaffold. Scaffold meaning you just attach things on it and you get different binding to the estrogen receptors. So it's a planar hydrophobic. The A ring, let's see, your aromatic A ring and the 3-hydroxyl are essential. So the A ring has to be aromatic for the estrogens. The 3-hydroxyl is essential for activity. B ring, if you unsaturate it, you increase potency. So unsaturation means you're adding a double bond. So if you add a double bond anywhere in the molecule, as you'll see later, you'll get increased potency. See, I added a double bond here, you increase potency. if you add small groups at the 2 and 4 positions, like I said earlier, so here you add small groups here at the 2 position and at the 4 position, they're tolerated, so that's why those molecules also work. Finally, if you epimerize the 17 position, you decrease activity. So epimerization means you're changing from a dash. So our dash, quiz question, our dashes, our wedge, oh, that's, yeah, never mind. Okay, quiz question, are wedges beta or alpha? Wedges are beta. Are dashes beta or alpha? Dashes are alpha. So if you change from a wedge, which is beta, or to a dash, which is alpha, or vice versa, if you change from a dash, which is alpha, to a wedge, which is beta, which is on top, then you decrease activity. So if this hydroxyl changes to a dash hydroxyl, because it's originally a wedge, then you get decreased activity. Cool. Now to illustrate the SARs. Okay. So first we're going to go over your circulating endogenous estrogens. So these estrogens are found in the body endogenously or naturally, compared to other estrogens you'll see later. So the first, there's 17 beta estradiol, which I talked about earlier, which metabolizes to estrone by which enzyme? 17 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. Only knowing that because I'm looking at my notes right now. There's also estrone, estriol. Estrone is the most abundant one in the body, whereas estriol and 17 beta estradiol are found least abundantly. So let's go over 17 beta estradiol first. So it's the most potent one, even though it's one of the least abundant. It's highly potent parenterally. Why? Because remember, parenterally administered drugs prefer to be hydrophobic. To get through your cellular membranes, once you inject it into the body, once it's circulating through the blood, they prefer to be hydrophobic to get through the hydrophobic cell membranes. They're poorly, it's poorly orally bioavailable. If you remember from PK, I'm just using PK abbreviations. F oral means oral bioavailability. Sorry if you hated PK. I'm just lazy. It's poorly bioavailable orally. Why? So remember that in the liver, glucuronidation and sulfation happen. So if you, let's see, here's my human head, and here's his tummy, and here's his liver. So if a person takes the drug, it's going to go to the liver first before it reaches systemic circulation. Boom, boom, pow. If you take the drug, it's going to go through your liver first, and if you go through your liver, the drug is going to go through glucuronidation, sulfation at the hydroxyl position. Remember, conjugation, which is glucuronidation, sulfation, happen at the hydroxyl position. So once these drugs reach the liver, if you take them orally, this hydroxyl will undergo conjugation before being distributed, and the active drug, which is this, a lot of it will be metabolized before it reaches systemic circulation, which explains its poor oral bioavailability, and therefore its short half-life because it keeps getting metabolized by glucuronidation and sulfation. However, estrone and estriol have long half-lives. Estrone, because it has only one hydroxyl, whereas 17 beta estradiol has two hydroxyls, 1, 2. This only has one and a ketone, so it undergoes less. Undergoes less metabolism before it reaches the systemic circulation. Let's see. Yep. Let's So main concepts John wants you to know is that it's highly potent parenterally because it's highly hydrophobic, and it's poorly 17 beta estradiol is poorly orally bioavailable because of its extensive metabolism by conjugation. However, how can we extend its short half-life? We can add a protecting group which protects against conjugation. For example, here is 17 beta estradiol. Now we're going to add protecting groups. So here's your basic 17 beta estradiol scaffold. We're adding a protecting group. We're adding 2 different protecting groups. So you don't have to know these protecting groups. Just know the concept that, well, I don't think you should know protecting groups, but I think you should know the concepts that adding a protecting group protects it against conjugation in the liver. So R is one protecting group, which is CH3, CH2,3, and CO, which is basically an ester. So if you see an ester onto your 17 beta estradiol, you know it should have a longer half-life than 17 beta estradiol itself. So here's your ester. You have a C double bond O connected to your carbons. Here you have your estradiol 17 beta cyclopentylpropionate. Here's your ester, C double bond O, and then your S17 beta estradiol and your carbon. So if you see your ester attached to your 17 beta estradiol, you know it's an estradiol. It's an estrogen because your aromatic A ring and your 3-hydroxyl, which are essentials. So we're gonna compare these with progestins later. Your estrogens have your aromatic A ring and your 3-hydroxyl. Know that. So if you see your aromatic hydroxyl and aromatic A ring and your 3-hydroxyl, along with an ester at the 17 position at the top, you know it should have a long half-life. And this protects against conjugation because no conjugation happening here, there's no OH. It's just an ester. It can undergo esterification, but that happens to the plasma, not the liver. Let's see. Now your synthetic steroidal estrogens. These are your synthetic ones because you can't really find triple bonds in nature. Well, you can, but not with estrogens really. So ethinyl estradiol, it can be orally administered and it has a longer half-life. Why is that? Okay, so if you imagine this molecule, look how fast this moves. I'm already have stuff on here. So here is your ethinyl estradiol, which is a component of many contraceptives like orthocycline. Here's your estrogen receptor. So remember, in your ligand binding site, it has to bind to your hydroxyl. However, this triple bonding group can block binding with your ligand binding site. Put an X because it's binding, therefore it's steric hindrance. So it's hindering the binding sterically by providing bulk. This prevents conjugation because the estrogen receptor cannot bind to the hydroxyl to conjugate it, or to bind to it, also, or your conjugation protein, like your CYP enzymes. So your CYP enzymes, your conjugation proteins cannot conjugate the OH because the triple bonded carbon group is in the way and it's blocking the part of the molecule that actually conjugates or adds a glucuronide or a sulfate. Since this is blocking conjugation, you get less conjugation or glucuronidation sulfation, therefore it's orally bioavailable, and since it's blocking metabolism, you get a longer half-life. Mestranol, if you remember from Zhang's lecture, your methoxy groups, your OCH3 groups, are activated by O demethylation. So that O is demethylated, so you're removing the methyl group off the oxygen to get the hydroxyl shown here. So this is converted to the hydroxyl. You're demethylating it, removing the methyl, and you get the hydroxyl. Let's see. Here you also get... I'll go back to that. So it's orally bioavailable. Why? Because, as I said earlier, if you block your CYP protein, here's your CYP protein, from conjugating it by this triple bonded carbon, it's blocking conjugation, therefore you get, it's orally bioavailable, and it has a longer half-life. Also, you're blocking this 3 position from being you're blocking the 3 position from being conjugated to, because it needs O-demethyl. It's not a hydroxyl. It needs O-demethylation, not conjugation. So it's orally bioavailable. Why? Because you're the 3 position and the 17 position are blocking the molecule from conjugation because they are not OHs, or they're being blocked. Specifically, the 3 position, your O-methoxy group, your methoxy group needs O-demethylation, not conjugation. At the 17 position, over here, you have steric hindrance, which is blocking conjugation. So conjugation is being blocked at 2 different positions, which explains its oral bioavailability. The 3 position, there's no hydroxyl to conjugate it. At the 17 position, it's being blocked by steric hindrance. Your conjugated estrogens can be formed as sodium sulfate salts. Why do you call them conjugated estrogens? So, if he gives you a molecule, asks you what type of estrogen it is, it's a conjugated estrogen, because conjugated estrogens, conjugation also means, in chemical terms, conjugation means number 1, glucuronidation sulfation. Conjugation also means alternating double bonds. So in the B ring, you have your alternating double bonds here that alternate with this one. Here, alternate with this one. So if you see the B ring with double bonds, you know it's a conjugated estrogen. B ring with double bonds. So here's your B ring, here's your B ring with double bonds. That's your conjugated estrogen. These can exist as sodium sulfate salts. Sodium sulfate salts, which are water soluble. Why is that? So if you remember chemistry, if you don't, I'll explain it again. So sodium sulfate is actually positively and negatively charged. So sodium has a positive charge, sulfate has on the oxygen a negative charge. Remember, water also has positive and negative charges. So let's see. Here's your water. Hydrogens have a positive charge. Water has a negative charge. Your negative charges are attracted to your positive charges on the sodium. Your positively charged hydrogens are attracted to your negatively charged oxygen. So that's why water associates with sodium sulfate and dissolves or solubilizes the molecule. This is a prodrug. Sodium sulfate drugs are water soluble because of the different charges on them. So let's see. This is a prodrug because if you cut off this part of the this part of the molecule, this turns into this. So your O turns into your hydroxyl if you cut off the sulfate part of the molecule. So your conjugated estrogens can exist as prodrugs by hydrolysis of the sulfate group. Your non-steroidal estrogens don't completely have 4 rings, therefore they're non-steroidal because they're not actually completely steroids. But they still have the same scaffold for binding to the estrogen receptor. Namely, they still look like they have 4 rings. So you have your A ring, your modified B ring, your C ring, C ring, and your D ring, which is actually here, 6-membered instead of 5-membered. Instead, they have a modified, it's modified quote-unquote scaffold, because it's actually, it looks like, it's actually still a scaffold, but it's modified version of the estrogens. So your common scaffold for your non-estrogen, non-steroidal estrogens, and your SERMs is your modified scaffold. This is a term I made up, your modified scaffold. So your modified scaffold exists with your non-steroidal estrogens and your SERMs, which I'll talk about later. So it's your complete A ring, carbon 1, carbon 2, and your complete 6-membered D ring, which may or may not have hydroxyls at the end. So it's 2 rings with 2 carbons in the middle. Both rings are 6-membered rings. So these are either your non-steroidal estrogens or your SERMs, or your selective estrogen receptor modulators. Speaking of your, ooh, that's awkward. Speaking of your SERMs, so the basics of them. They're selective because their tissue is selective. They can act on bones, lipids, breasts, uteri. If you tell me the plural of uteruses, I'll be eternally grateful. Estrogen receptor, they bind to the estrogen receptors on different tissues, like bones, lipids. And they're modulators because they act as both agonists and antagonists. In chemical terms, they're partial agonists. They maintain bone density, protect against coronary artery disease, and they prevent breast and endometrial cancer. As I said earlier, these follow the modified scaffold of the non-steroidal estrogens. So non-steroidal estrogens and SERMs all have the same basic scaffold. They have the 6-membered ring, 1, 2 carbons, and the other 6-membered ring, which is your D ring. And you may or may not have the 2 hydroxyls. For example, clomiphene is a mixture of, I would not memorize the structure, I'd understand the concept. I'm just showing here to illustrate. So clomiphene, here's your A ring, 1, 2 carbons, and your D ring. That doesn't have 2 hydroxyls. As I said earlier, it does not have to have 2 hydroxyls. Clomiphene is a mixture of N-clomiphene, which is your anti-estrogen, and Z-clomiphene, which is your estrogen. If you want a mnemonic for this, it's easy. E-A-Z-E. Easy. And clomiphene is your anti-estrogen. Z-clomiphene is your estrogen. So N-clomiphene is your antagonist. Z-clomiphene is your agonist. So therefore, if it acts as an antagonist and an agonist, it's a partial agonist. Speaking of partial agonists, you like my transitions into this video? Tamoxifen is also a partial agonist in that it acts as an antagonist or an anti-estrogen, in that it's used to treat estrogen-dependent breast cancer at all stages. Throwback to HEMONC. It also acts as an agonist at the bone, lipids, and the endometrium, to name a few tissues. Zindoxaphene is a predecessor of bazidoxaphene, which is a 3rd-generation SERM that's used to treat osteoporosis. Raloxifene, Raloxifene, let's see, what about, let me go to my notes. Raloxifene is also a predecessor of arzoxifene. All 4 molecules, zindoxaphene, bazidoxaphene, raloxifene, and arzoxifene, are heteroaromatic ring derivatives. So they all have heteroaromatic, means you have a different ring group. Different atom in the ring. So heteroaromatic, as in this. So instead of them all being carbons, this is a sulfur. This is also heteroaromatic because this is not a carbon. This is a sulfur within the ring. So within the ring, here's a sulfur, not a carbon. Within the ring, here's a sulfur, not a carbon. Dr. Jung really emphasized these 2 molecules So if I wanted to know molecules, I wouldn't know this clomiphene, but I would know these two structures and why the development is important. So this raloxifene is short acting. However, arzoxifene over here on the right is longer acting and has a higher bioavailability. Why is that? Because the ether here, ether over here is less reactive than ketones here. So double bonded oxygens, double bonded oxygens are reactive, whereas single bonded oxygens not really reactive. So since raloxifene has a ketone here, which is a double bonded oxygen, compared to arzoxifene, which has a ether group at the same position, it's more reactive than the arzoxifene because double bonded oxygens are more reactive. So therefore, since arzoxifene has the ether, it's longer acting, and it has a higher bioavailability. Also in terms of bioavailability, remember that conjugation decreases bioavailability. So the O-methyl group over here compared to here protects against conjugation. Quick question, what reaction do O-methyl groups undergo metabolic wise? O-demethylation. Yes, the O-methyl group protects against conjugation. So arzoxifene is longer acting and has a lot higher bioavailability because of the ether group, which is more stable than the double bonded oxygen, and because the O-methyl group protects against conjugation. Two other SERMs are nafoxidine and lasofoxifene. Basically, your SERMs have the phene suffix. So phene. If it's a phene, you know it's a SERM. If it gives you the word and asks you to name the drug class, it's a phene. Y'all get the idea. Okay. Next shout out for the video. This one comes from Helene herself. Everyone say hi, Helene. Hi, Helene. Okay, so APHA ASP presents Dessert Wars, happening in Smith 129 in the classroom on January 28th, 2019, from 12 to 1 p.m., aka lunchtime. There's no fee to compete as a baker. APHA has $70, 70 7 times 10. That's 7 Chick-fil-A's, y'all. Has $70 worth of gift card donations from local RVA bakeries, namely Morsels, Red Cap Patisserie, and Sub Rosa. It's $5 to taste all the delicious food, which will include 2 dozen cupcakes donated by the Mixing Bowl Bakery. Ooh, sounds like a good deal. I might actually do this. If you like to compete as a baker, or if you would like to enter to taste the delicious food, which is $5, which includes 2 dozen cupcakes donated by the Mixing Bowl Bakery, contact Helene in this email. Hit her up, hit homegirl up to sign up to eat or to bake. Remember, winning bakers get $70 worth of gift card donations from local RVA bakeries, Morsels, Red Cap Patisserie, and Sub Rosa. Okay, that's enough. Your Progestins. These, your basic SAR. I'm making this slide up. Well, I made this for you. I'm not making it up. I made it for you. You know it's a progestin because it has 18 and 19 position substitution, but this is not always necessarily true. So don't remember that. However, remember that these have your non-aromatic A ring. So if you want to compare these with your estrogens, let's see. your estrogens. So your estrogens have the aromatic A ring. However, your progestins do not have your aromatic A ring. Instead, they either have no double bonds, or just one double bond. So if it's not aromatic in the A ring, then you know it's progestin. However, you can't rely, if you also see an 18 and a 19 position substitution, then you definitely know it's aromatic, but not all the time. So count on the A ring with aromaticity being your indicator of being a progestin or an estrogen. Progesterone has your double bond at the 4 and 5 position. 5 beta prognanidiol. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at the 5 position, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's beta. Remember, beta is a wedge. Yeah, beta is a wedge. Let's see. Beta is a wedge. Prognanidiol. Diol means 2 hydroxyls. Di meaning 2 hydroxyls. 1, 2. So that's progesterone and 5 beta prognanidiol. So progesterone is the precursor to 5 beta prognanidiol, in that you add the 5 beta here and you turn the ketone into the hydroxyl and you saturate the progesterone. I don't think you have to know that transformation, but if you do, you probably don't. That's a lot of steps. He didn't go over that. Basically, your progestins have your non-aromatic A ring. That's pretty much what he wanted you to get out of that. Okay, so he wanted you to also understand 19 Nonsteroid progesterone development. Remember, nor means demethylation, which will be present in all of your molecules here. Ethisterone is orally active because, as I said earlier, it has steric hindrance from conjugation by this triple bond. It protects conjugation happening at this hydroxyl. 19 norprogesterone. Nor means demethylation. Here you're demethylating the 19 position. So nor demethylation at the 19 position. 19 position is between the A and the B ring. So 19 norprogesterone. Same as progesterone, except you're taking 19 methyl out. It's 8 times more active than progesterone. Therefore, the 19 is actually not essential or good. So I said earlier that your 18 and 19 substitution are not necessary. Here is an example of that. Actually, taking the 19 out is makes the molecule more active. Here, you have this group, your ester group, your acetyl group, or your ester group protects the molecule from conjugation. So remember earlier, originally you had your hydroxyl. Now you're turning this hydroxyl into an ester. If you do that, you protect the hydroxyl from conjugation. So protection from conjugation. Therefore, you increase the bioavailability and the half-life. You also protect the molecule from conjugation by this triple bond here, which protects the molecule from conjugation by steric hindrance. In use, we have levonorgestrel, which is the most potent estrogen. It has a long half-life of 16 hours and a high bioavailability of 95%. This is a product of norgestimate. So norgestimate is a prodrug. It has a higher half-life, but it has a lower bioavailability. Why does that have a higher half-life? Let's see. Because it has... Okay, so this is a little complicated. Let's see. It has a higher half-life because of this acetyl group. So here you have hydroxyl. Here it's your ester group. So ester protects against conjugation, which increases your half-life. But you might be noticing that this is not a hydroxyl, so shouldn't it be, what do you call it? Shouldn't it be protecting also? Well, it turns out that this affects the bioavailability orally because this is actually conjugated. This can actually be conjugated because it still has the OH over here, leading to its lower bioavailability compared to here, which actually has no OH. Remember, your OHs are conjugated. Ketones are not conjugated. Conjugation. So it has a long half-life because of this ester group right here, which protects against conjugation, protects the hydroxyl from conjugation, but this hydroxyl here leads to a lower bioavailability because it can be conjugated. Your major product of norgestimate, which is a prodrug for levonorgestrel, is your deacetylation. So deacetylation means you're removing your acetyl group. This is your acetyl group. This is your acetyl group. You're turning it into hydroxyl. So let's see. This turns into hydroxyl. So this turns into hydroxyl. That's deacetylation. Deacetylation is your major product for norgestimate. Last one. Desogestrel is another prodrug for etanogestrel, which is your active form. So desogestrel is on the left, etanogestrel is on the left. It has a higher selectivity to progesterone receptors over androgen receptors for reasons unknown right now. It has a high bioavailability. Number one, okay, so why is it a progestin? Progesterone? Because of the non-aromatic A ring. So non-aromatic A ring, non-aromatic A ring. Why does it have a high bioavailability? Number one is let's see, it has no hydroxyl groups here like it's supposed to. This is protecting it from conjugation, and this is also long enough to protect it from conjugation. So this one and this one both provide steric hindrance from conjugation. From steric H hindrance from conjugation, which explains its high bioavailability. Same here and here. And has a long half-life of 12 to 60 hours. Why? Apparently, this double bond here is hydrophobic enough, so it distributes into tissues well enough to increase its half-life. It just stays in the tissue, therefore it increases its half-life. So the bioavailability here is from steric hindrance. Here, the half-life is due to the hydrophobic double bond. So to review everything, oh look, I can actually review things now. Thanks for the iPad, guys. Let's see, all the way to the top. Steroids have 4 rings. A, B, C, and D. Start with the booty hole for the caterpillar and go up to your D ring. Your D ring is 5-membered. If I could know any 7 positions, maybe 8, it would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the A ring. Your 19 beta, which is your wedge on between the A and the B ring. Your 18 beta, which is between your C and your D ring. Your alpha, your beta comes on top of the molecule. Alpha comes on the bottom, which is also your dash. Those will play a role as you've seen. Steroids act as ligands of the hormone receptors by binding to the ligand binding domain, not the DNA binding domain, because that's where DNA binds. Estrogens follow this metabolism route. 17-beta estradiol is converted to estrone by 17-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. Both 17-beta estradiol and estrone can be converted to their 2-hydroxy and their 4-hydroxy products. All molecules here can be conjugated at the hydroxyl position. Hydroxyls undergo glucuronidation and sulfation. SAR, your estrogens have your aromatic A ring and your 3-hydroxyl. The scaffold is planar and hydrophobic. Unsaturation increases potency. Epimerization, so going from dash to wedge or wedge to dash. so alpha to beta, beta to alpha. It decreases activity. Adding small groups like hydroxyls to the 2 and 4 positions, as you've seen with the metabolism products, are tolerated. Your distance between your 2 hydroxyl groups, one on the A ring, one on the D ring, is 10 to 12 angstroms. Your endogenous estrogens, your 17-beta estradiol has low bioavailability orally because it didn't undergo conjugation at the hydroxyl positions. However, it's highly potent when it's parentally administered because it's hydrophobic owing to all the carbons. Remember, methyls or carbons are hydrophobic. However, how can we extend the half-life of this short half-life drug? Adding protecting groups. So these protecting groups are actually esters that protect hydroxyls from conjugation, therefore increasing the half-life. For example, estradiol valerate, which is a component of Natasia. I think so. Estrone, estradiol have long half-lives, owing to less hydroxyls. Estradiol, I'm actually not sure. But decreasing the number of hydroxyls or protecting the hydroxyls or changing the hydroxyls to esters or other compounds decreases their metabolism. So 3 ways overall that you learned from this lecture that metabolism can be decreased. You can change the hydroxyls, so adding protecting groups, or changing them to not hydroxyls or methoxys. You can change hydroxyls, decrease the number of hydroxyls, or I'm actually not sure about this one. So this one's definitely let's see. You can change hydroxyls. What else did I say? You can change hydroxyls, the number of hydroxyls. You can steric hindrance. So 3 ways you decrease metabolism: change hydroxyls, decrease the number of hydroxyls, and you add steric hindrance. That's how you decrease metabolism overall from this lecture. Synthetic steroid estrogens. You have your steric hindrance, which decreases your metabolism, therefore increasing your half-life and allowing for oral bioavailability. You can activate mestranol by demethylation, which also protects it from metabolism and allows it to be oral bioavailability. Remember, changing the hydroxyls or changing it to a methoxy group, which has activation by demethylation, can decrease metabolism. Let's see. In this molecule, you're blocking. You're changing the hydroxyl and you're providing steric hindrance, which decreases metabolism, allowing it to be orally bioavailable. Your conjugated estrogens have conjugation in the B ring. These can exist as sodium sulfate salts, which are water soluble because water has charges. Sodium sulfate salts have charges. These can act as prodrugs at the sulfate position by hydrolysis of the sulfate group. Non-steroidal estrogens don't completely have 4 rings, but they have a modified scaffold, which pretty much looks like your estrogens. Selective your SERMs are partial agonists. They act as antagonists and agonists. They're selective to the tissue level. Let's see examples. Pretty much all of these have the suffix "phene." Clomiphene is a mixture of enclomiphene and zuclomiphene. It's easy. Enclomiphene is your anti-estrogen. Zuclomiphene is your estrogen. Tamoxifen is also your partial agonist, acting as an antagonist or an anti-estrogen and an estrogen. Zindoxaphene, bazodoxaphene, raloxaphene, and azoxaphene have heteroaromatic ring derivatives. Raloxaphene is short-acting, whereas azoxaphene is long-acting because you changed hydroxyl to a methoxy group, and your ether is more stable to reactions than ketones. Come check out the dessert wars. Progestins have your non-aromatic A ring, which is different from your estrogens because of your aromatic A ring. Let's see. In terms of 19-Nonsteroidal progestin development, demethylating at the 19 position or ignoring the progesterone increases the activity of your progesterone. These have longer half-lives because of the steric hindrance from your triple bonded carbons. These can also have longer half-lives by changing the OH to an ether group or an acetyl group, which protects it from conjugation. In use, you have levonorgestrel and norgestimate, which is a prodrug for levonorgestrel. Norgestimate has a lower bioavailability because of the hydroxyl group. However, it has a higher half-life because you change it from the hydroxyl of the D ring to an acetyl group or an ester group. The acetylation of the norgestimate is the major product. Finally, desogestrel is your prodrug of etonogestrel, which is your active form. Steric hindrance occurs at the 18 beta position ethyl and your 17 position triple bonded carbon, which protect your 17 hydroxyl from conjugation. Your increased half-life comes also from your hydrophobic double bond over there in white. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you found this video interesting. If you have any feedback, positive, negative, constructive, I prefer constructive criticism, and positive feedback also works too. Check out pollev.com/CHRISTIANRUI629. Y'all know how that works already. So your 19th video. Thanks for watching. Good luck on the exam.